Ahem. Once upon a time, Ricky from All Sorts of Words was trying to mind his own goddamn business and read a book. Hey, what up, nerd? Oh, not too much. Are you seriously reading right now? Yep, that's what I'm doing. You know, reading is like the worst thing you can do with your free time. Oh, come on. That's not even... Did I hear someone say reading isn't cool? How did you get in here? Don't worry about that. The window was broken when I got here. Reading is the chillest, illest, dopest thing around. Peep game, son. What's happening? I literally have no idea. Books are great. Have you heard? Turn them sideways and it's a sandwich with words. Books. Check them out. Your dad won't take your mom back after the affair. Yeah, boy. The situation in Gaza is far more nuanced than I can cover in a rap song. That rap song was horrible. We'll have to finish that story later. So this video is kind of a big screw you to all the gatekeepers. I don't care if you read the newspaper, magazines, comic books, or books, as I like to call them, but you're a reader. There's so many different types of books that it can be difficult to nail down what you want to read according to your own taste, because taste in books is like fingerprints. Like my wife and I tried a book exchange recently where I let her read one of mine. She didn't like it. And I'm reading one of hers right now, and I'm on the struggle bus, man. So I totally get it when someone says, you should read this, how hard it is to get into something you're not into. So I wanted this video to serve as something fun for avid readers like yourself who are into the comic book space, which is what my channel is largely dedicated to see some really cool books that are tangentially related to the comic collecting hobby that I think if you haven't heard of, you might have a good time with. So without further ado, books that are kind of like comic books. Everyone in the world knows this image right here. That's Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer. If you've ever been to a mall around Christmas time and you see one of those calendar kiosks, you've seen Frank Frazetta's works. It's inescapable. He was an amazing artist, really prolific in the 60s and 70s. He invented that character. That's called the Death Dealer, right? The character's name is Gaff of Baal, B-A-A-L. Kind of like Diablo, Lords of Destruction, Baal. Well, he teamed up with a writer named James Silk and wrote a fantasy series adding context to that painting. And it is Conan-style sword and sorcery, cleaving skull to the teeth dopeness. And if you like sexiness, if you like ultra barbarian violence, it's so much fun. And beyond all of that, it also has many endearing characters that I think you could enjoy. So if you're into high fantasy, ass kicking, and Conan, this is right up your alley. For the collectors out there, it is super expensive. Like nerds who want to buy books like these sometimes, they want the physical copy. You know what I mean? Like you could buy a reprint, but you spend $2,000 on an X-Men book, because that's what we are. We're collectors. So the digital versions are readily available and they're super cheap, but there's only 4 books in the series and each book is like, no joke, anywhere between like $75 and $250, depending on who's deciding to sell their book that week. They're hard to get. If you're a Golden Age collector, Armageddon 2419. This is Philip Francis Nolan. I can never remember his name. This is the individual who wrote Buck Rogers. It originally started as a newspaper series that was like weekly serialized, right? And a publisher went to Nolan and said, hey, we want to make a full book out of your stories. Can you approve an author who will do like the connective tissue for some of the more disjointed ones? And he was like, I'll do it myself. And so this is the story of Buck Rogers. Warning, this is readily available. You can get this stuff reprinted a million times on Amazon, but The difficulty with that book is it is classic 60s science fiction, which means it's more concept forward and not very emotional, not very like human. So, for example, he's in the future and everyone's really primitive in the future because of war. Obviously, that's how science fiction works. And so this guy from our time is in the future. He's helping these, tribes find equilibrium among each other. And he's hanging out with this chieftain's daughter. And they're going on missions and stuff, and it's a totally fun time. And then, like, randomly they stop and have sex. And I was like, I didn't even know you liked the girl. So in the 90s, Hellraiser had a comic series that was ridiculously good. The art was fantastic. It's really ghoulish and gory. And they're all Hellraiser short stories, like tales of the Cenobites throughout time, doing cool, crazy shit. And so if you like those comics, you like the short story Hellraiser format, or hell, you just like the Hellraiser movies. Hellbound Hearts is a collection of Hellraiser short stories by famed horror authors across the spans. And I gotta tell you, like, there are experimental, weird Hellraiser stories. There are super sexy, gory ones. This is such a great read. One of the short stories, Sister Celise, it's written by Barbie Wild. Barbie Wild actually played the female Cenobite in the second Hellraiser movie, and she became a friend of Clive Barker's, and she was a writer, so she made it into this book. Barbie Wild's... Here, I'll get the book. Barbie Wild's Voices of the Damned. I'll grab it. Here it is. Of course, it's in the bottom of the bookshelf. Barbie Wild's Voices of the Damned. This... Look it up on Amazon. This is a frustratingly expensive book because it was widely short printed and features original Clive Barker art. That's his. If I didn't burp on camera, it didn't count. But this contains all 3 chapters of the Sister Celise story, where it's like a nun who finds an ancient book and becomes a Cenobite. This tome only includes the first chapter. So I would try to find the other 2 chapters online because it's like a female forward, feminine takeover of the Hellraiser hellscape. And I know, like, if you've been beaten over the head with the Marvel stuff, all of those words might make you uneasy. But I'm telling you, it's really good here. Clive Barker approved it. It's good shit. Read it. Second to last, this is Gladiator by Philip Wiley. Philip Wiley wrote a book in 1920. Let me give you a brief description. A farm boy in the Midwest is raised by his average-ass parents who teach him values. And so as he gets older and develops crazy superpowers, he goes out into the world with those values and super strength and changes the world for the better, becoming an icon. No, I'm not talking about Superman. I'm talking about Hugo from this book, Gladiator. This book is actually a direct inspiration for Superman. This came out in the 20s. Superman was 1938. It's a scientist in the Midwest who realizes that he can create a serum that if he puts into the womb of a pregnant individual, animal, human, whatever, that spawn will come out with super strength, endurance, all the crazy stuff. He does it to a cat early in the book, and the cat like destroys livestock across the state until it's eventually brought down. But the story of Hugo is... It's kind of heartbreaking. It's really short, so it's an easy read. Super readily available on Amazon. It's been printed. It's in the public domain now. Printed a million times. Go get it. It's pre-superhero. So it's asking questions in the 20s, before Superman and the concept of heroes even existed. Some of the things that we take for granted now, like, do I have a responsibility with these powers? Should I change the world? Should I take over the world? And... of note, this book contains my favorite single chapter of any book I've ever read. He's at one point in his life after college, which is its own chapter in his life. He is in Coney Island, on Coney Island, and he's a strong man for like a circus show. And of course, he's super strong, so he can like bend iron and pick up whole benches of people, and it's awesome. He's making a ton of money. But there's like a streetwalker kind of girl that he hooks up with, and he can provide everything she needs. He can provide all the money, all the security, and he loves her, and she loves him. And side note, there are some surprisingly spicy, sexy spots for something that was written in the 20s. People today say like, oh, it's Nicki Minaj, she's ruining the planet. No, I'm telling you, there are some parts in that book where boys out there, you're gonna have to cross your legs. But she, the girl he's with, sees so much value in him. She sees how strong he is, how powerful, how he really could change the world if he wanted to. And she feels guilty that he's wasting all his time kind of taking care of her. And so that causes her a lot of guilt. So she writes him a Dear John letter and skips town. But the chapter itself where he's reading the Dear John letter, I haven't cried that hard since Little Women, man. She's telling him, like, I don't love you. I never wanted a family with you. I don't see a future with you. But it's that scene from Old Yeller where the kid's like, get out of here. I don't love you anymore. And he's throwing rocks to get the dog to go away. Except this time it's a human being. It's not a dog. And he knows what she's doing. So when she says, I don't love you, he instantaneously sees the subtext. I don't love you. I love you so much. I don't see a future with you. I see my whole life unfolding in front of me with you. There's no way we can make this work. There's no way we can make this work. And he sees it and realizes it. And instead of getting mad or heartbroken, he is just grateful for her being in his life and kind of pushing him out the nest, so to speak, to go be the great hero that he can be. It's really special. Last but not least, you know Tom King? Yeah, that Tom King. And that Tom King. And that Tom King. Well, in another life, he used to work for the FBI. And legit, he worked for the federal government. And he saw himself as a writer. He wanted to quit the game. He actually talks about it in the afterword of this book. And so he quits his job working for the government and he writes A Once Crowded Sky, Tom King. This is a superhero novel, its own superhero universe, which actually contains some comic art throughout the story that gives you context and background. Did I say FBI? He worked for the CIA. He worked for the CIA. Like that's any less impressive. And so if you like Tom King's writing in Supergirl or Mr. Miracle or his legendary Batman run, then you can have a good time here. The only drawback of this book, and I bet if I got Tom King drunk, he'd admit it. This is a like almost one-for-one Watchmen retelling. Even the villain in this book, if you've read Watchmen, you're going to identify him right away. Oh, smartest guy in the world, used to be the brains of the team, now is a multi-millionaire or billionaire, whatever. Oh, okay, yeah, he definitely did it. And he definitely did it. It's not even spoilers. If you know anything about Watchmen and you start to read this book, you'll see the writing on the wall from a million miles away. But that doesn't make the characters less endearing. That doesn't make the story less valuable. It's a really, really good time. So whether you're a comic book collector, reader, and you haven't read a book in forever, or you read all the time and comic books are just another thing that you read, I think those are some good suggestions that you can have fun with. So, let's shake it off and head back to Ricky from All Sorts of Words, trying to get some reading done right after the conclusion of a pretty horrible rap video. The rap video concludes, and Ricky blah, 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 blah. So I hope that clears up some things about reading and how it's truly off the chain. I never disparaged reading. That rap was super lame. Oh, come on, fellas, be a little more constructive with your feedback. So is that like an actual Tommy Hilfiger jacket? Yeah. Right. I was gonna say that the era in which that jacket was cool called and wants it back, but I'm not sure they had phones invented back then. What? That seems uncalled for. And your breath is god awful, homie. Seriously awful. I'd offer you a stick of gum, but I don't think you need the extra 5 calories. You dress like a school shooter that shops exclusively at outlet malls.